The galactic menagerie orbited a dying star, a floating fortress of black iron and cold light. For 300 cycles, it had been the most feared destination in the galaxy, not because of its location, but because of its collection. The menagerie did not hold animals. It held sentient beings so dangerous that no other prison could contain them. Each cell was a masterpiece of xenotechnology, designed specifically for the worst criminal of a given species. The curator, a Xylosian named Vex, floated through the central hub. His species had no bones, just a sack of translucent jelly wrapped around a hive of nervous tissue. He wore a harness of control nodes. Vex took pride in his work. He had collected a Ureth Queen that could unmake starships with a thought. He had captured a trio of Vordak berserkers who had eaten their way through a colony of 10,000. He had even contained a Nash intellect, a being of pure thought that could rewrite neural pathways from a kilometer away. But his newest acquisition confused him. The creature was called Kalen Ward. The file from the human authorities was short. It listed his species, human. It listed his crimes, 47 confirmed murders, 63 suspected, all performed with no weapon other than his own hands and mind. His method, patience. He would befriend, isolate, and then vanish his victims over years. When caught, he had smiled at the judge. Vex had expected teeth. He had expected claws, venom sacs, or at least a carapace of some kind. Instead, the human was soft, pale pink skin, no fur, no tail, 5 digits on each limb, eyes that seemed too small and too close together. The humans who delivered him had worn armored suits and kept their weapons trained on him even through for separate airlocks. They had refused to remove his restraints until the cell was sealed. The cell was a beautiful thing. Vex had spent a fortune on it. The walls were 10 meters thick of compressed neutronium alloy. The floor was a force field grid that could detect a change in air pressure from a single breath. The air scrubbers filtered for toxins, explosives, and biological agents. The bed was a simple foam slab. There was no window. The only light came from bioluminescent panels that dimmed on a natural cycle. Vex watched the human on his monitors. Kalen sat cross-legged on the floor. He did not pace. He did not scream. He did not bang on the walls. He simply sat, eyes closed, breathing slowly. For the first week, he did not eat the nutrient paste the dispensers provided. He only drank water. On the 8th day, he ate. He ate exactly half of the portion. On the 9th day, he ate the other half. By the end of the first month, he had established a pattern: wake, sit, drink, eat half, sit, sleep, repeat. The other specimens in the menagerie sensed something. The Ureth Queen stopped her constant psychic screaming. The Vordak berserkers, who had never been silent, grew quiet and pressed themselves against the far walls of their cells, as far away from the human section as possible. The Nash intellect, which had spent decades trying to escape, suddenly became cooperative. It asked Vex, in its clicking, mental voice, a single question: "Why did you bring that thing here?" Vex did not answer. He was a scientist. He wanted to observe. He wanted to understand what made humanity so afraid of one of their own. The humans had not just sent Kalen Ward, they had sent him with a note. The note said, "Do not let him speak to your guards. Do not let him learn your language. He is not dangerous because he is strong. He is dangerous because he is patient." Vex dismissed the warning. He was a Xylosian. He did not have a language of sound. His kind communicated through modulated bioluminescent patterns on their skin. There was no way for the human to learn that. And even if he did, so what? The cell was impenetrable. The force fields were self-repairing. The guards were robotic, mindless things with no personality to exploit. 8 months passed. Kalen Ward did nothing remarkable. He ate, he drank, he sat, he slept. The menagerie's other specimens began to calm down. The Ureth Queen went back to her screaming. The Vordak berserkers resumed their endless pacing. The Nash intellect went silent again, perhaps bored. Life returned to normal. Vex grew bored as well. He assigned junior keepers to monitor the human's feed and turned his attention to more interesting projects. A new acquisition, a crystalline life form from the Andromeda Galaxy, promised to be far more entertaining. He forgot about the quiet pink creature in the neutronium cell. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was allowing the junior keepers to rotate shifts. The junior keepers were young Xylosians, newly hatched and eager to learn. They had not yet developed the caution of their elders. They were curious. One of them, a youngling named Tel, began to watch the humans feed obsessively. Not because Kalen was doing anything, but because he was doing nothing. Tel found it soothing. The human stillness was a meditation. Tel would sit in the control room, his jelly body pulsing soft colors of calm, and watch the human breathe. After 3 months of this, Kalen Ward opened his eyes. He stood up. He walked to the wall of his cell and placed his palm against the neutronium alloy. He did not push. He did not scratch. He just stood there, palm flat, for 6 hours. Tel was fascinated. He recorded everything. He watched as the human repeated this every day for a week. Always the same wall. Always the same spot. Always 6 hours. Then, on the 8th day, the human turned and looked directly at the observation lens. The lens was microscopic, hidden behind a layer of the wall material. It was invisible to any known species. But Kalen Ward was looking straight at it. He smiled. Tel's bioluminescence flickered with fear. He played back the recording. The human's eyes tracked the lens as it moved, following its slight mechanical drift. That was impossible. The lens had no external moving parts. Its drift was measured in micrometers. But somehow, impossibly, the human had found it. Tel reported this to Vex. Vex did not care. He was deep in negotiations for the crystalline life form. He told Tel to adjust the lens's position and increase the patrols. He did not look at the recording himself. That was his third mistake. Kalen Ward did not speak for the first year. Not a word. Not a whisper. The human authorities had warned that he was highly verbal, that he could talk his way into a locked safe if given enough time. But in the cell, he was silent. The junior keepers began to speculate that the isolation had broken him. Perhaps he was catatonic. Perhaps the fear had finally caught up. Tel was not so sure. He noticed small things. The human's nutrient paste intake had changed. He was no longer eating half portions. He was eating 3/4. And he had started moving around the cell at night when the bioluminescent panels were dim. He would walk a path. Left wall, back wall, right wall, front wall. Always the same path. Always the same number of steps. Tel counted. The human took exactly 412 steps each night. Never more. Never less. Tel began to sleep less. He watched the feed at all hours. He noticed that the human's breathing had synchronized with the menagerie's environmental systems. The air scrubbers cycled every 47 seconds. The human's exhale matched the cycle. Inhale on the scrub, exhale on the release. Tel checked the logs. The human had been doing this for 6 months. He reported this to Vex again. This time, he demanded a meeting. Vex, irritated, granted it. The human is mapping our systems, Tel said, his jelly body flashing urgent red. He has learned the cycle of the scrubbers. He knows the frequency of the force field grid's power fluctuations. He has found the observation lens through vibration patterns. He is not catatonic. He is studying. Vex pulsed a dismissive yellow. He is a soft pink animal in an impenetrable box. What can he possibly do? Tel tried to explain. He tried to describe the pattern of the steps, the synchronization with the scrubbers, the way the human had stopped eating entirely for 3 days before a scheduled maintenance cycle. He tried to warn that the human was not trying to break the walls. He was trying to break the routine. He was trying to make the menagerie predictable. Vex pulsed a cold, final blue. The conversation was over. He ordered Tel to take a rest cycle. He assigned a different keeper to monitor the human. Tel, defeated, retreated to his quarters. He did not rest. He watched the feed from his personal console. He saw the new keeper, a dull creature named Zorn, who barely glanced at the monitors. He saw the human stop walking at night. He saw the human resume sitting cross-legged on the floor, but something was different. The human's hands were moving. Just his fingers, tapping against his thighs in a pattern. Tap, 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 a rhythm. Tel zoomed in. He watched the pattern for hours. It was not random. It was a code. The human was tapping in binary. But not human binary. Xylosian binary. The language of their bioluminescence, translated into pulses of pressure against his own skin. Tel's entire body froze. He understood. The human had learned Xylosian. Not by hearing it, because there was no sound. Not by seeing it, because the observation lens was hidden. He had learned it by watching the bioluminescent patterns of the junior keepers through the microscopic lens. He had seen their colors shift. He had cataloged every flash, every pulse, every combination. He had spent a year learning a language that had no sound, no written form, nothing but light. And now he was speaking it with his fingers. The code was simple. It was a question. Tap, 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 tap. The human was asking, "Who is watching?" Tell should have reported this immediately. He should have sounded every alarm, locked down the entire menagerie, and called the human authorities. But he was frozen. Not with fear, with curiosity. He had spent his whole life studying dangerous beings. He had never met one who thought like this. He wanted to see what the human would do next. He did not report. The human stopped tapping after 3 days. He went back to sitting. He went back to eating half portions. He seemed to have given up. The new keeper, Zorn, reported that the specimen was docile and uninteresting. Vex approved a reduction in monitoring. Only 1 hourly check would be required. The rest of the time, the feed would be recorded but not watched. That was the 4th mistake. And the final one, the maintenance cycle came. Every 60 days, the menagerie's robotic drones entered the cells to clean and recalibrate the force field grids. The drones were mindless, simple things. They followed a pre-programmed path. Open airlock, enter, spray sanitizer. Check grid frequency, exit, close airlock. It took 90 seconds per cell. Kalen Ward had been waiting for this. He had watched the drones on previous cycles. He had counted their steps. He had measured their speed. He had noted that the drone's optical sensors had a blind spot directly beneath its chassis. He had observed that the airlock's closing sequence had a lag of 0.3 seconds between the drone's exit and the seal. He had discovered that the force field grid, when recalibrated, briefly flickered at a frequency that interfered with the observation lens. He had planned everything. The drone entered his cell. Kalen did not move. He stayed on the floor, sitting cross-legged, eyes closed. The drone sprayed sanitizer. It moved to the force field grid. It began recalibration. The lights flickered. The observation lens went blind for 1.7 seconds. In that 1.7 seconds, Kalen Ward moved. He did not attack the drone. That would have been stupid. The drone had no vital systems to damage, no brain to disable, no off switch that a human hand could reach. Instead, he did something much simpler. He reached into the drone's tool compartment and removed a single screw. Not a large screw. A tiny one, no bigger than his thumbnail. He had seen this screw on previous cycles. He knew that it held the drone's navigational gyroscope in place. He also knew that the drone's diagnostic system did not check for the screw until the end of the cleaning cycle. When it returned to its charging station, he closed the tool compartment. He returned to his sitting position. The 1.7 seconds ended. The observation lens came back online. The drone finished recalibration. It turned. It exited the airlock. The airlock sealed. Nothing had changed, except the drone, on its way back to charging, began to drift. Without the screw, the gyroscope wobbled. The drone's path became slightly crooked. It corrected. It wobbled again. It corrected again. The diagnostic, sensing an anomaly, triggered a full system check. The drone found the missing screw. It reported the error to the central computer. The central computer flagged the maintenance log. A junior keeper, not Tell, but another, saw the flag. He noted that the screw was missing. He ordered a replacement. He did not think about why the screw had fallen out. He assumed normal wear and tear. The replacement screw arrived 6 hours later. But in those 6 hours, the drone had been taken offline for inspection. That meant that one of the 6 cleaning drones was unavailable. The remaining 5 drones had to cover its route. That meant delays. The delays pushed the cleaning schedule back by 3 hours. The 3-hour delay meant that the next maintenance cycle would occur during a different shift, with different keepers, different patterns, different blind spots. Kalen Ward smiled in his cell. He had not broken a single wall. He had not injured a single guard. He had simply removed a tiny screw and let the system break itself. The dominoes began to fall. The next maintenance cycle, now delayed, coincided with a shift change. The junior keepers on duty were tired. They had been working double shifts because of a recent outbreak of space flu in the crew quarters. They missed things. They missed that the airlock on Cell 7, the human cell, did not seal properly after the drone exited. The seal was off by less than a millimeter. It was within tolerances. The computer did not flag it, but a millimeter was enough. Enough for a thin stream of air to pass. Enough for sound to travel. Enough for Kalen Ward to hear, for the first time in 18 months, the distant hum of the menagerie's reactor core. He listened. He counted the hum's frequency. He mapped it against the vibration patterns he had felt through the floor during his nighttime walks. He now knew the exact location of the reactor relative to his cell. He knew its power output. He knew its cycle. He began to tap again. Not binary this time. A different code. One he had devised himself, based on the patterns of the force field grid. He tapped against the wall. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. He was not speaking to the keepers. He was speaking to the Nash intellect to cells over. The Nash heard him. The Nash was a being of pure thought. It did not need sound. It felt the vibrations through the structure of the menagerie itself. It had been silent for months, but now it stirred. It listened to the humans tapping. It understood. The human was offering a deal. Freedom for information. The Nash did not trust the human. But the Nash had been caged for 200 cycles. Desperation is a powerful drug. The Nash replied. It could not tap. It could not speak. But it could think. And its thoughts, when focused, could influence the menagerie's computer systems. Not much, just tiny glitches. A sensor reading here. A door lock there. Nothing that would trigger an alarm. Just enough to be annoying. The Nash had been doing this for years, hoping to create enough errors to cause a cascade. It had never worked. But now, with the human's instructions, it had a target. The human wanted the Nash to glitch the airlock on Cell 3. Cell 3 held a Vorduk Berserker. The Berserkers were stupid, violent, and single-minded. They were also incredibly strong. The human did not want the Berserker to escape. He wanted the Berserker to panic. A panicked Vorduk would thrash. A thrashing Vorduk would damage its cell. Damaged cells required manual override from the control room. Manual override meant that a keeper would have to leave the safety of the hub and enter the cell block. The Nash did as it was asked. It focused its thoughts and sent a glitch to the airlock of Cell 3. Not an open command. Just a flicker. The airlock status light blinked from green to yellow for half a second. The Berserker saw the yellow. It had been trained to associate yellow with the cleaning cycle. The cleaning cycle meant that the force field would briefly weaken. The Berserker, in its panic, slammed its body against the wall. The wall held, but the impact triggered a seismic sensor. The alarm went off. The junior keepers scrambled. They pulled up the feed for Cell 3. They saw the Berserker pacing, agitated, but contained. They checked the airlock. It was green. They checked the force field. It was stable. They marked it as a false alarm and went back to their posts. But one of them, a keeper named Law, noticed something odd. The seismic sensor had recorded a second impact, much smaller, coming from Cell 7. She checked the human's feed. He was sitting on the floor, doing nothing. She dismissed it. The second impact had not been a thrash. It had been a kick. Kalen Ward had kicked the wall with his bare foot, exactly at the same moment the Berserker had slammed into its own wall. The combined vibrations had been enough to mask the location of his kick. The computer recorded both impacts as one. But the human's kick had not been random. It had been aimed at a specific point on his cell's wall. A point where, according to his 18 months of mapping, the neutronium alloy was slightly thinner due to a manufacturing flaw. The flaw was microscopic. No instrument had ever detected it. But Kalen Ward had found it by walking the same path every night, feeling the vibrations in his bones, and listening to the echo of his own footsteps. He had found a weakness in a material that was supposed to be unbreakable. He did not kick again. He did not need to. He had what he wanted. A hairline crack, invisible to the naked eye, but present. He pressed his thumb against the crack. He felt the cold breath of vacuum on the other side. Not much, just a whisper. But it was enough. Enough for him to know that the wall was no longer perfect. Enough for him to know that the force field grid, which relied on the wall's structural integrity to maintain its shape, now had a flaw of its own. He waited. The Nash, emboldened by its success, sent another glitch. This time to the environmental controls. The temperature in Cell 7 dropped by 2 degrees. The human's breath fogged. He did not shiver. He used the fog to map the air currents. The crack was letting in a tiny stream of cold air from the vacuum. He followed the stream with his eyes. He watched it curl around the cell. He saw that it flowed toward the airlock. The airlock was not perfectly sealed. The millimeter gap was now 1.5 millimeters. The cold air was pushing through. He began to tap again. A new pattern. Faster now. He was not speaking to the Nash. He was speaking to the Ureth Queen. The Queen was a telepath. She did not need tapping. But she was also insane after 300 cycles of isolation. The tapping gave her something to focus on. A rhythm. A heartbeat. The Queen had not felt a heartbeat in 300 cycles. She pressed herself against the wall of her cell, her massive, worm-like body quivering.